Well, after struggling a little bit to catch any dobbin, feeding has definitely brought a few fish into me peg. So what I want to talk through next is what I like to do down the middle, and that's fishing a little bit of sweetcorn. So it's not something, in all honesty, that you see very often on, especially on canal type venues, on snake lakes. Corn's a very, very underused bait. And as a bit of a secret sort of thing, on here, this particular venue, it was a real edge that I used to have. Feeding corn down the middle used to really, really outscore other anglers that were feeding maggots and meat and that, because it's something different that fish aren't used to. So firstly, same as, I want to go through quickly the rigs I want to use. Down here I've got a depth of about 5 foot down the middle. And because I'm using such a heavy bait like sweetcorn, what it does brilliantly is anchors itself on the bottom. So I can actually get away with using a nice light float. So in this case, again, same floats that I use for so many of my different methods that we fish. I want a slim wire stem float. That's perfect for sitting down the middle, because for some reason, whatever it is, it's probably because there's no slopes. The middle doesn't seem to tow anywhere near as much. So you can often get away with fishing a lighter float that still maintains stability. But as I was talking about a second ago, the sweetcorn also aids in stability, because I've got a lovely little anchor on my hook once my sweetcorn lands on the bottom, allowing a nice light float to hold in place much more than it would with other baits. So for this rig particularly, I've got my little 4x12 float set at 5 foot, and I simply have number 10s spread all the way through my rig until the bottom 2 foot, where I have 2 number 12 shot. What that's going to allow to happen is my bait to sink nice and slowly, or nice and naturally. It's going to sink quite quick because it's a big lump of corn. But when it's actually sat in the water, my rig's going to be a lovely arc. Because down the middle, if there's any wind, the last thing I want is a really tight rig, because with such a heavy bait anchoring on the bottom, if there's a wind blowing, it'll cause my float to actually push underwater. So by having a nice strong, strung out shot in, and by plumbing up, so I'm right at the bottom of my body. So I've actually got a bit of allowance on the bottom. I'm not really tight, I've got a nice curve in my rig. It allows me to stay direct to my bait and see any bites as soon as they happen. So going back to the rig rise, as I say, a nice strung out rig. The same as my bread rig, I've got an 015 mainline. It's nice and durable. I can catch whatever I want on that. I've actually dropped down the size of elastic. Again, this is mainly due to the fish that I'm going to be catching. Down the middle, in this particular venue, for whatever reason, you tend not to catch too many carp, especially when I've got a load of room, whenever I'm coaching, or like today when we're sort of pleasure fishing. But I'm going to catch a lot of F1s, sort of 1 to 2 pound. So our 3 to 6 elastic, that's really going to let me get them in quickly, but at the same time, it's not going to upset the fish when I hook them, meaning that other fish in the shoal stay well behaved, and I get a bite a lot quicker when I go in. Hook length wise, I've gone a little bit lighter in this rig, in that I've dropped to 010, and the same, similar to what Andy was using, I'm on an 18 Guru pellet hook. Again, a nice light gauge wire hook that's going to rip through my corn nice and easy, but again, I can land lots of nice fish. It's not going to make my hook bait look too heavy, because it's too heavy, making the bait sink too quickly with the added weight to the hook. Next off really is the reasons that I choose to use sweetcorn. So it's a little different to other anglers' preferred choice of baits, which would be, in this case, meat and often maggots as well. Maggots are probably the most popular bait, which, don't get me wrong, catch loads of fish. It's what Andy's going to demonstrate to you next. But for me, the issues with all those baits is that they sink very, 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 very slowly. And in the deepest area of peg, what that can lead to is fish raising to eat your bait and being a little bit more difficult to catch. You can't keep them on the bottom where they're a lot easier to get bites from. The beauty of corn is it is possibly the fastest sinking bait that you can use, meaning that I can put my bait in, it'll go straight to the bottom, and that's where I'm going to catch my fish. There's going to be very few fish intercepting my bait, causing me misbite, liners, all sorts of problems like that. What I also can do with sweetcorn is make a really, really good noise with it. If I throw any sweetcorn, it makes the best noise out of any bait. So it also has great attractive purposes, pulling fish into me peg, but at the same time feeding a very, very small amount of bait, so I can keep it right where I want it and attract all the fish in and get as many bites as possible with a tiny amount of loose feed in me peg. So right, what we're going to go on to next, I'm going to have a little fish with sweetcorn. I've actually been loose feeding that peg for probably 30-40 minutes before I fished it, which is something I feel really important with any middle section of your canal. The fish don't tend to want to be down the middle of snake lakes. They live across, they come down the middle to feed. So by feeding it just little and often, all I've been feeding is 3, 4, 5 pieces of sweetcorn, probably every 10 minutes, just to get a little plop, plop, plop to drag some fish in, and hopefully there'll be a few fish there, or that pretty much certainly will be, a few fish there waiting for me when I go on it, and there's not too much bait to mean that my bait's going to be too difficult for them to pick out. Proper man, Annie. We good? Right, quickly before we start fishing, something that I regularly get asked is the correct ways of hooking sweet corn. So there's a few different ways that I've seen people do it, but for me, again, keeping things simple, what I want to do is make sure that my hook point is sticking out so I can actually hook a fish, but mainly I want my hook to be holding the corn firmly so I keep it on. The last thing I want to be doing is coming in and out because my bait fell off. So simply by getting my piece of sweet corn, getting my hook, and I literally hook it right in the corner of the sweet corn like that, and just pull my hook round. So I find that the top side of your corn is much tougher than the bottom. If you hook it through the bottom, it tends to rip quite easily. Hooking it right through that corner, it gives me a nice firm hook hold, but at the same time, my point's sticking right out, and I'm going to hook any bites that I get. So what I'm on to next, I'm going to feed a little bit of bait. So what I've done, I put a tiny little pole mounted pot on, and I'm literally going to put 6 grains of corn in. So the best thing about feeding sweet corn is how accurately you can feed it. With it being such a heavy bait, if I put a tiny amount in a pot, I know that where I put it in, it's going to sink pretty much straight down. So even in 5 foot, I'm going to maintain a really, really tight feed area for the fish to home in on. So I'm going to put that bait right in on top of that. And then I'm literally going to hold my rig and let it settle right over the top of that bait that I've just fed. So what I've got down the middle, I've got a lovely far bank marker in the shape of a chimney in the distance. And that's allowing me to hold it right in exactly the same place. So hopefully my little trap set and the fish can home in on that and I get a bite. I did a wonderful job in missing that, and the fish actually bow-waved off that, which is crazy. That means there's some fish off the bottom. So I'm quite happy with that one then, that with seeing the fish swim on a peg, that it was a fish right up off the bottom. It wasn't anywhere near the bottom. So my little pile of sweet corn will still be perfectly intact, which is great. It saves me shipping back in and feeding again. So I'm going to sit there just for a few seconds, just to see if anything has been attracted to that pile. And if not, I'm going to put my hand in the box and I'm going to feed just a couple of pieces over the top. What I tend to do with corn, I use my cupping, anything that I cup in as my accuracy to keep my bait a really tight pile for the fish to home in on. But I can also use the attraction of the noise of the sweet corn going in to pull new fish into my peg if I'm not getting any bites. It's amazing how often that if you feel there's nothing in your swim, simply by introducing a couple of pieces, attracting them in with that bait going through the water and the noise of the corn hitting the surface, it's amazing how quickly it draws fish in and you get a little run of fish from it. But at the same time, I can't do that too regular because it'll mean spreading too much bait around my peg and there's less chance of them picking up my bait then. With a little tiny indication then showing there's something in my swim. So that the best thing about fishing sweet corn on a hook for me is just how positive it is in showing up on the bristle of my float. Because it's such a heavy bait, it works as like a lovely little anchor that if I want to, I can actually pull my float and it'll actually go really, really low because my bait's anchoring. So I know that I'm lovely and tight to my hook bait. And what I've actually done in this case, by laying my rigging in a certain way, I let my float move with the tow or the wind, depending which one's more prevalent on the day, and it can tighten my whole rig up in a lovely big arc, meaning I see absolutely everything that happens in my peg. So yeah, I've not had a bite on that then. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get two pieces of corn. What I try and do when I am throwing it, I'll try and choose 2 pieces that are identical in size. What I don't want to be doing is throwing and one going short, one going past my bait. But with a bit of luck, I can throw it right on top of my float. So it's much better. They stay nice and accurate right where I want them. And so what I'm going to do is give that a few more seconds. And if I'm not happy, because I'm feeding again a little tiny area, if I don't get a bite, I'll literally move my float around a bit. I've got a good metre square there that I can fish in, where I'm throwing my bait. So I can search around my peg really easy, not worrying about too many little piles all over the place, and try and find whereabouts in the peg they're sitting, if there's any there. It's changed a little bit now. When I first had a go while Andy was fishing the pellets, the tow was actually winning. It was actually backing up a little bit, so I was best off laying my hook bait down and holding on tight to it. And since I've come off my box and gone back to fishing, it's actually moving the other way now. The wind's actually winning slightly. The wind's actually winning slightly and it's moving to me. The water's moving to my left. So So because it's doing that, in the next cast, it may be worth laying my rig the opposite way. So before, because the tow was backing up towards me, my arc was coming towards me, my bait was actually further down my peg than my float. If the opposite's happening now, if the tow stopped altogether, I'll try and put it in the other way, and again, that'll create that arc for me. The last thing I want is my bait, is my float sitting right above my float and creating a slack line, because then I'm not going to see some bites. There we go, it's a lovely proper bite right over the top of my pile. See, because of how tight I'm going to be as well, just an indicator to see if I'm doing it right or not, hopefully the hook hold of every single fish should be really close to the front of the top of the lip, showing that I've seen my bite as soon as it happened. If you find that you're hooking your fish a little bit deeper, what it could mean is that you had a little slack line in your rig and the fish had a chance to suck it in, spit it out, and I never saw a bite happening because I had that slack line. With a bit of luck in this case, see, he's going to be right where I want him. He's perfectly in the top lip, showing me that I'm seeing my bite as soon as it happens. So that is for me the biggest benefit of using corn on a hook. That, aside from it being something a little bit different that not a lot of people seem to try on here, but it definitely, for me, it's one of my biggest edges when fishing down the middle on this particular venue. Just going to give that one more little go, see if there's a few more there. So I try not to introduce too much bait. Similar to how I fish hard pellets, I'm very, very mindful of the numbers of bits of bait that are on the bottom. So sweetcorn's a big old bait. So I wouldn't be too sure in how many actual grains of sweetcorn each fish can eat without getting full up. So the last thing I want to do is introduce huge amounts of bait if there's not many fish there eating it. So just by cupping in 6 grains every single go, it's a nice sort of sensible number for me to always not worry about my bait being lost among a load of other loose feed. I'm just going to hold on nice and tight to that. So it always amazes me with corn, even with it being such a heavy bait, how many bites I actually get just after it's settled. I suppose that's due to it being really, really visible. It's a bit more visible than any other bait, I'd imagine. And they come straight in as soon as that bait hits the deck. When they are feeding properly, that's when you tend to get most of your bites. So again, nothing's come to that bait. Give it a couple of minutes, see if anything comes. If nothing's there, a couple of little plop, 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 get some attraction. So it's not worth feeding bait over the top if I'm getting bites really quickly after cupping, because all I'm going to do then is make the fish start coming off the bottom, looking up, waiting for sweetcorn. That's the last thing I want. I want them on the bottom, we're looking at the bottom, feeding on that corn that I've already put in. So your throwing is only to attract fish when you feel there's nothing in your swim. The same again, I've not needed to throw there. I've just sat waited, I've had a lovely proper bite, and we've got another great big F1 on. So you notice with that elastic, we're fishing such light elastic, it allows the fish to behave in such a docile manner when I've actually hooked it, meaning I go straight back into my peg and I should get another fish because it's not left my peg in a really erratic manner. It should have left the other fish that were in my peg quite happy, it's not frightening them. I'd say I can still land it just as quick as I would with any other kit, just by shipping back, pulling on my puller kit, popping him up and having him. He's pulling a bit, this one. Oh, he's a little carp, that's right. Well, see, he's the perfect size of fish, that's what I'm after. For me, my middle line, a lovely run, a nice 2 to 3 pound fish at the end. That's the best sort of fishing I can imagine.